Welcome back, everybody. Very excited about this week. We've got Nicole Wansbury, an ex-colleague of mine, unit geology manager at a large mining company. She's a very clever woman in mining, and she's got so much to share with us today. She's a resource geologist, I would say, by specialist area, but she will do her own introductions and tell us a little bit about herself, but also a cum laude master's degree at, I must say, one of the universities I love, and it's got nothing to do with the fact that I was also there. But yeah, she's a very clever woman, but she's also a people leader and love giving back. And so today we're going to talk about relationships and teamwork and investing in others. And I'm so grateful that Nicole eventually had the time to talk to us today. Nicole, how are you this morning?
Well, in yourself, thanks, Christo, for having me. As you say, eventually we managed to get it right. So thanks for your patience.
No, I'm very excited because we're going to learn so much about you today. And there are so many women in mining that will absolutely enjoy your story and your resilience and you telling us a little bit about yourself. And maybe that's a good start for you just to introduce yourself. Who is this woman and mother as well? And tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from.
Sure. So as you mentioned, firstly, I'm a mom. I have two boys, 9 and 12, so they keep me on my toes. Very, very busy kids. But yeah. So in terms of my career, I never actually planned to be a geologist. It was never in the plan. I always wanted to be a teacher, and that was sort of my original plan. And
No way.
yeah,
Didn't
that
know that.
was what I originally set out to do. And I went and, had a few meetings with people because I did my undergrad at Pretoria and had a lot of discussions with people. And a lot of the advice that was given was rather do a BSc, and you can then do diplomas after the fact. And you can still teach with a BSc degree. So that was the original plan, and I suppose the rest is history. I enrolled for a earth science degree, and just loved the geology so much. It just became it was such an exciting course. So yes, that's where I decided that I was going to stay. I wasn't going to pursue the teaching anymore, and that's sort of how I got into geology. So my career started in my third year. The mines used to put up adverts in the universities for vacation work at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There were, formal bursaries and those types of things they were few and far between. A lot of my colleagues had De Beers bursaries, so they were quite, everyone sort of saw how lucky they were. So we figured that it was myself and two other guys that I studied with. We applied for this vacation work. It was just 2 months, January, December, and you kind of do a bit of everything on the mines. So that's when I went to London for 2 months. That was sort of my first exposure. Never been underground, never seen a mine, never been exposed to any of that. So that was quite exciting. A lot of core logging, the usual filing. Everyone kind of uses and abuses you, but it's part of the experience, I suppose. But that's where I met a lot of the people that I still work with today, actually, which is pretty awesome. And then from there on, just did my honors degree with the company that actually sponsored me to do my honors degree, and went through huge panel interviews and all sorts of things, and didn't actually realize at the time it was my job interview that I was going for. And they called me in December and they said, "When can you start?" And I said, "What am I starting?" And they said, "Your job in January." So started in 2006 on the mines. And I guess the rest is history. I've been there ever since, 18 years now that I've been on the mines. And as you mentioned, my master's degree, I started that part-time while I was working. Took me quite a long time. I had my two kids in the same time frame. So that was a bit rough, but I managed to finish. There was a lot of pushing from my mentor and my professor at the time, Prof. Grant Cawthorne. So there was a lot of pressure, but also support from them to just get it done. So that's the story of my master's. I did that through Wits. And
Just
then just the usual management courses that the company puts you through, all of those types of things. So there's been a bit of that. So that's sort of in a nutshell how I started my career and where it's ended up, I suppose, not as manager geology, managing this huge resource. It's massive. It's basically from Impala to Brits, so it's a huge piece of real estate. But there's a lot of benefits to that, of course, as well. So I'm quite fortunate in the position I am, and yeah, I love what I do. I still it gets me up every morning, and it's dynamic, as you know. The mining industry is very dynamic, which is what I think I love the most about it, as well as the people, of course. We're talking about relationships. That for me, that's the two sort of main draws for me that I love so much about this industry and what I do.
so it's very interesting. I love the fact that you started off thinking you're going to be teaching, but isn't a lot what you're doing in any case, a lot of teaching and coaching? And is that where the passion of our prep session comes from, to say, look, I would love to talk about teamwork. I would love to talk about relationships and investing in others. Is that connected in any way?
100%. A lot of, you can learn all the theory and you can go through the practicals and you can do all of that. But a lot of what I learned was from, the people on the ground teaching me, taking you underground, having the conversations, showing you what needs to be done. Obviously there's no right and wrong way, and everybody shows you their way, but it's the one-on-one conversations and the coaching that I found that I got the most value out of. And, I try to do the same as well. We have a lot of graduates that come through, new students, obviously new colleagues that join, people that leave, and new people that join. And it's the same thing on the shafts as well. That those one-on-one coaching sessions are the most fruitful, absolutely. And continued learning as well. It's not just when you start in a new position, it's continued learning. It's learning from, as I mentioned, my mentor and my bosses and, the people, my peers around me. I try and learn something from them. Often, obviously we're doing different things. So it's the planning environment, the survey environment, all the different MRM departments. So I do believe that, the coaching aspect of it is such a big component. And that's, what got me started and continued learning, as I said. So definitely it's all linked, I think, somewhere in the background.
Sure. How was that very first interaction when you went to the mine and now you've got vacation work? Did you, during that period, go underground as well? Or was that just surface at the time?
No, so we went underground. So it was my first time underground. We went with the geology manager. There was a safety guy. I don't recall his name, and then the three of us. And I vividly remember, so it was a shallow incline, so we walked down that day. And I remember the area that we went to had this massive no entry sign at the entrance. We crawled underneath the no entry sign because they had a fall of ground. And I kind of said to the geology manager at the time, like, are you sure we're supposed to be doing this? He said, no, it's fine. They've cleared it. We have to go and do the investigation. This is all, part of the job. So I'm not going to lie, like I was petrified, obviously, the first time going around. You don't know what to expect. You have no idea. Obviously you get taught these things at varsity, but I'd never been exposed to an underground mine. So as frightening as it was, I think it was exhilarating, and just coming out and, that experience and the thought, the whole time you're thinking, I've got hundreds of meters of rock above my head.
Yes.
So that's quite, and the noises, and I recall everything was amplified, the noises and the smells, and it's just, obviously it's such a different environment. You can't really describe those things to people, the smells and the sights, and specifically the noises. You're very hyper aware of every noise. Is that the rock? Is what's going on? So that was,
I have to run.
Yes, exactly. Watch everybody else what they're doing. I mean, everyone was so relaxed and, just doing their thing and showing us what they were doing. So it was a scary but awesome moment. I think that kind of solidified things for me. Like, this is what I want to do. Because you either, we get a lot of people, they go underground and they're like, sure, this is not for me.
Yes.
It either is or it's not. So,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you have to kind of figure that out, I suppose, before you start with your career. And I was lucky enough to be able to have that before I started. So that was a pretty awesome experience the first time.
Yeah. I, I jokingly talk about my first experience where we got into the little man carriage, a person carriage. It's like the small little train car that people
Yeah.
get into, and it's like very, very, very confined space. And this guy with his beer belly, he was a shift boss, and he was like twice my size. I was like 19 years old, and I thought to myself, how can anybody do this every day of their life? This is what this guy does. This is what I'm signing up to do. What am I doing to myself? So,
Yeah.
but I love the fact that you mentioned that. But the the women in mining is a topic that we agreed beforehand that we're going to talk about. And before we go into the other aspects that you're passionate about, I'd like to touch on that. How difficult was it for you, and how difficult is it, do you think, at the moment, at that maybe then and now, for women in mining?
Um, I think for myself personally, I've always been very fortunate that the people that I've worked for and the people that I've worked with have always been very protective. I remember starting out on the mines, and I think a lot of times, obviously it's majority men. A lot of the times, the shift bosses and the MOs are very protective of you because they see either their daughters or their wives, and
Mm.
it's this natural instinct to protect. So I always felt very safe. I never felt unsafe. As a rule, women are not allowed to go underground on their own. That's a rule that I've, it's in. And for yourself as well, you obviously need to be sensible about these things. So I've never felt or been in a situation where I felt afraid or threatened or anything like that. And I think because I've always been surrounded by these men that I felt safe around because they're so protective, as I mentioned. So I've always had that sense. I've never struggled with from a safety perspective.
Mm.
Um, in the boardroom work, corporate type thing, it's sometimes it can be tough, and I think a lot of it is people underestimate you, and you always have this feeling that you have to prove something to the men around you. And a lot of that is just internal. That's not because anyone's made me feel like that. I know they talk about it, the imposter syndrome, where you don't feel that you're
Yeah.
worthy or that that you belong there. And I think over the years, it gets better. You realize you have this ability, you've got the skill, you bring different things to the table than your peers and your counterparts. And for me, it's never been a man versus woman. It's men have skills, women have skills, and what we put together is it just makes things a lot better and more efficient. Obviously with the different ways of doing things. So I've had a few scenarios where they've been nasty comments or things like that, but you can't take those things personally. And I think it goes both ways. I know the men get the same thing. You get you get the mining can be quite a hard industry sometimes, and the guys are shouting at you or whatever, but you can't take it personally. It's not a personal attack. It's you have to see it that everyone's just trying to get their jobs done and do it as efficiently as possible. So, that's been my strategy, is not taking things personally or feeling that they're particularly picking on you because you're a woman or, those types of things. That's never ever been my mindset. I think a lot of times these women in mining forums don't necessarily focus on the right things. I'm not too involved in the women in mining side because, a lot of times I don't necessarily agree with the agendas that they're pushing. I mean, there are important issues like the PPE or, facilities and those types of things. But I think those things should be sorted out, get them done, and then move on to the more, pressing issues, the gender-based violence, the violence that the women do encounter underground. I think the women that are underground every day, the general workers, I think, they generally struggle a lot more probably than the women in the offices and the corporates and the specialist services. This is just my opinion, and from being involved in a few workshops where these issues have come up, where these are the things that the women discuss. I mean, I was in a session the other day with new graduates, and they were sort of giving their experience. And the one girl actually said she's petrified to go underground, and she's afraid because now her boss thinks she doesn't want to work. But it's because she's just genuinely afraid, because the zamazamas are now unfortunately a real threat, where previously they maybe weren't. So it's just, I suppose things like that, where there are women that are genuinely afraid to do their jobs because of the physical threat to them, and they don't feel safe. And I think as a company, that's something that they've tried really, really hard is to make sure that women feel safe in all spaces, whether it be underground, in the office, in boardroom, wherever. And there's a lot of campaigns and things that are run. So I think from a corporate level, maybe the difference back then, when I started to now, is it's in everyone's faces now, I think. And there's a lot of discussion around it, which is good because it brings all these issues to the fore. Previously, women probably kept these things to themselves for fear of either losing their jobs or, no one's going to take me seriously. But I think now, there's so much that's set up where women actually genuinely believe, if I tell someone about this, they're going to help me. And I can sort it out. So I definitely think that, pushing it in the media and in these forums is the right way to do it. We have to bring these issues to light. But I think women just need to speak up. A lot of times we deal with issues internally, and we just, it's not that we're afraid to speak up. It's just like, we'll deal with it, we'll handle it, we'll figure it out, which is, I suppose, a lot of with a lot of issues. And as a mom as well, you kind of you figure it out. You don't complain. You just carry on. So I think it's a similar thing. But as I mentioned, it's not a sort of a focus of mine that women in mining, we need to be treated specially or differently. It's just talk about the issues, listen to the issues, and that they need to really focus on the hard things and the things that really affect women, not as much as the PPEs and things like that are sort of side issues. So that's just my feeling on it, and my experience of women in mining.
Sure. I love the fact that you say, don't take it personal, but that's women, men, anybody that in business, if you get feedback, not to take it personal. It's a, call it a level of maturity and maybe emotional health that you got going on that, and understand that. And you are just much better than I am, because I struggled with that a lot, that, every criticism you get into a boardroom, or, anything that goes south and it's not according to plan, you do take it personal. Maybe there's a bunch of pride, in my case, that there was, that you really want to perform well, and you don't want to make mistakes. But I love that. What would you tell a younger Nicole starting out now as a woman in mining? Anything particular that you would do different, or enable different, or support them different?
I would probably say is, don't be afraid to attend the meetings or get in people's faces. Don't feel like that you have to minimize yourself. Speak up. If you have an opinion and you believe in your opinion, or there's a technical issue that comes up and you genuinely believe that the data you have and the facts that you can, discuss, that, put them forward. Don't hold back. I think I did that a lot in the beginning, where, you can be in a specific forum maybe, and, we're discussing something and you have an opinion, or, the answer or something like that, and you kind of step back and keep quiet. I think that's probably something that I would change, but that's something that you learn over time, because it's not something, I suppose, that happens overnight.
Yes.
I think it's not just uniquely women. I think as well as any young graduate, or
Yes.
young in the industry, or any industry really, you kind of keep quiet and you listen more, I think, than what you speak. But I think you mustn't be afraid to speak up and voice your opinions or facts or have those discussions. So I think people notice you a bit more if you do that.
Mm.
And I think now and what I'm struggling with currently is the digital meetings. It becomes very difficult in a forum like that when there's 10 or 12 of you in a discussion, and people are shooting their ideas or their opinions, and to get a word in sometimes is a bit tricky. Whereas in a boardroom it's different, or a physical meeting it's different. Face to face you can read obviously body language. So I think it's difficult for the newer generation coming through. Most of the meetings now are digital. You don't necessarily have these face-to-face meetings anymore. So I think it's difficult from that perspective. It's definitely something, as I mentioned, that I still struggle with. I suppose it's another skill that you have to learn as you go. We're all still learning.
Yes.
Comes to the digital meetings, but
Yes.
I think that's a tricky one, definitely, for at this stage.
Do you need some one-on-one coaching? Do you know that the miningcoach.com offer these services as part of Kumena Consulting? Kumena means grow, and most top athletes and sport teams all have coaches to grow and become better. Why don't you reach out to us by sending us an email, and you will qualify for getting your first coaching session absolutely free. Contact us at Christo@theminingcoach.com. Terms and conditions apply. Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I do think it's a new world of technology that we are facing, and maybe just something that maybe works for maybe a little bit not for you, but for us as a collective listening to this podcast. I found that for me, that's similarly sitting in a lot of online meetings, just switching on my camera and being present, even if nobody else's camera is switched on, makes a huge difference. It means you are engaged, you are listening, even just making facial expressions that when somebody says something and you agree with it, just nod your head. It just shows engagement. And I think I love the fact that you say speak up when you strongly believe in something, and it does come with confidence over time. Definitely one has to build that confidence. But in the technical field that you are in, you are a specialist, you're a geologist, you're actually one of the competent people signing off on this annual resource declaration for the business, which is obviously a massive responsibility. In the technical field, you are very passionate about relationships and teamwork and investing in people. Where does that come from? Tell us a little bit about that passion.
I think I realized very early on, starting on the mines, that if you have people in your corner, that, you're always going to have support. And I think, as I said, it comes with having a voice. As a specialist, typically you're advising people and you're giving them recommendations, and they can choose to listen to what you're saying or ignore it. And, obviously, a lot of the recommendations have a safety component to it as well.
Yes.
So I think if you have those relationships with people, it builds trust. And once someone trusts you, I think then they're more inclined to then take your recommendations and apply them, and they realize, okay, she knows what she's talking about. Let's try this out. Or, then enter into that dialogue and say, look, we don't necessarily agree with you, but let's tweak it. Is there something else we can try? And I think it just opens up as I said, the trust. If you have a relationship with people, they do trust you, and they value your opinions, and what it is that you're bringing to the table. So that's definitely something that I've always, right from the beginning, I very quickly realized that in this industry specifically, it's probably like that everywhere else, but just building those relationships, because even if you move across the property to shafts, I still see people at the shaft that I started at, and they still greet, and they it's like seeing a long lost friend, and it's such an awesome feeling because you realize that you did have an impact on those people. Maybe you taught them something, and you always learn something from them. And something else that I often tell the people that that are my mentees, that a lot of times if you walk into a room or into a discussion, you need to act like you're always going to learn something from that person, because they see that engagement, they see that you're genuinely willing to listen to them, that you want to hear them out. You're not just listening to reply, you're listening to understand. And I always like to approach it that way, going into a meeting, that I can always learn something from the people that I'm talking to, no matter who they are. I'm not one for titles or this is your position, this is my position. It's regardless of who you are, I can learn something from you, and it's only going to benefit me. And the hope is that it's vice versa. You have a conversation with someone that you have a deep relationship with, you have this trust, and like I said, they trust what you say, they're willing to implement your recommendations. So for me, that's where everything comes from in terms of teamwork and that kind of thing. If people trust you, and they're in your corner, then you're always going to, manage and come right, I think, a lot better than if it's the opposite. If there's this friction, it hampers progress and, adding value and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of always been my philosophy about relationships.
Sure. I love that, because in the technical field, as you say, we are the specialists that advise. And our clients don't always want to or have to take our advice. We know it better because we can see the numbers, we can see the technical understanding of it, and they don't always. And for many years, I was on the other side of the table, where people like yourself advised to me, and now I'm advising to others, and it is a very different environment. It is one where you have to take people along and collaborate and include them and really try and understand where they are. And I love what you are saying there. Have you ever had? You probably have. We all have had relationships going wrong. But how do you fix a relationship that has gone wrong, especially in a technical area where it hasn't gone as planned?
It's quite difficult for me, Christo. I'm an introvert, so naturally my first inclination is just to withdraw into myself and avoid conflict. So I've had to come out of my shell a lot, and I think if things get skewed, like any relationship, I suppose it takes work, and you just have to take it step by step. So if things go wrong or you have a disagreement, as I said, for me the first thing is not to take it personally. Try and understand. And another thing that I'm quite passionate, or that I strongly believe, is that empathy goes such a long way. I like to be an empathetic leader, because people, if people as well, if they relate to you, I think then that also builds relationships. So I think if things are skewed, take it step by step, slowly but surely. You have to rebuild, have those conversations, have the engagements. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's difficult sometimes. I avoid conflict at all costs. So I would normally, make a joke or try and make light of the situation before, going into sort of a bit more of an in-depth discussion, trying to repair things. That's normally been my strategy. So that's also, as I mentioned, learning every day how to deal with conflict, repair relationships if things have gone a bit sour, or if you've had disagreements. So I still struggle with that. It's something that I have to work on. Again, it's a lot of these things are learned behaviors. You have to practice them. So it's something that I definitely still work on. That's tough for me.
But it's beautiful, and thank you for being vulnerable, because it's not the easiest. Similarly with me, I actually mentioned this publicly once, that the same as you, I avoided the conflict for a long time in my career, realizing that this is, so I'm an enabler. So if you follow the working genius model, my strength is enabling, and I like to put tools in the toolboxes and help people to give them what they need to be successful. And then if things go wrong and it doesn't work, then I'll just give them more tools. But you don't actually have that difficult conversation. But and dealing with conflict has been something that I've ran away for a long time until I realized that if I can value the relationship more than I, worry about the issue, and that the relationship is important, then it is an opportunity to talk about the issue. Because if you value the relationship, you value the person, then you actually have this desperate need to actually want to have this conversation with this relationship that has gone wrong. And we all make these mistakes. It's not as if we are not human. We are human. We make these mistakes. So thank you for being vulnerable there. I love that. And talk to us about, I'd like to move on a little bit on the topic of investing in others. And you are passionate about that, and you have this teaching spirit in you. Talk about this investing in others. And I know in our prep session, you spoke about a lot of young graduates moving into the area of geology and mineral resource management, and they lack quite a bit of, call it the practical environment. But you're quite passionate about helping out and getting something going there. Talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, so we have, obviously, within the company, there's mentorship programs. So they encourage the young graduates or the students or the young employees to have mentors. Well, they encourage everyone to have a mentor. So there were some of, there were one or two of the young graduates that had approached me to mentor them. And as I mentioned, we have a forum as well where it's specifically the women graduates, and then they would have sort of a few of us, the HODs that would get together, and we just have a discussion. And I found that such a fruitful discussion because we shared our experiences with them, the good and the bad. And then, as I mentioned, we had a session afterwards where we discussed, the challenges that they're facing. Can we help them solve these based on our experience? And I think, the takeaway from that, and maybe something that I've always felt, is that, as you move up the ranks in the company or as you gain more experience, you have to pull people with you, because there's no point in having this feeling like, oh gosh, this person can replace me, or I'm going to become redundant if I teach them this. I think a lot of people maybe historically felt that way. They were threatened by giving teaching people skills or having talent come through the ranks. And that's not how I feel at all. I mean, you have to, as you say, enable and empower people. And a lot of it is, making sure that the young graduate, the women specifically, have voices. But something else that I had said to them is that, you can't come in with this mindset that, you're entitled to something or you need to be given something, A, because you're a woman, and B, because you have a degree. We all started at the bottom. You have to start with the basics. And that's something that I like to stress with them, is you have to start with the basics. As a geologist, if you're not logging core, you're not going to learn about the rocks. If you're not going underground every day and on the face and physically dealing with the problems, it doesn't help to sit in the office and have a discussion with people. So it's getting, getting your hands dirty, getting underground and making the most of that, because it's an opportunity. Not every student or everyone that wants to get into mining, and I think at the moment there's a huge amounts of students that are sitting without work. So it's realizing how fortunate you are to be in this environment, and using the tools, as you say, that you've been given. But I just, it's making sure that the next generation, the people that will eventually, I suppose, be in your shoes, are equipped to do the job, and it's our responsibility to give that to them. And as I said, you can do so much theory and courses and learning, but it doesn't give you that hands-on experience, that experience that you learn from, I hate to say the older generation because I'm not old, but probably the next generation of geologists, or people in mining. So it's something that I'm definitely passionate about. I was part of so SACNAS have a program as well in conjunction with the Geological Society, where people from industry mentee young graduates, people that are going through graduate programs or that are still at university, and that's something else that we found, and that as well, that maybe a gap is between university and industry. There's no sort of coaching or anything that happens within universities to prepare you for, you know, what's coming in the work environment. And yes, the students come into the graduate programs, which are nice programs that are set up. I mean, I never had that, so they're very fortunate to have these set programs. But I think a lot of the softer skills, as I said, how to network, how to, you know, make relationships with people, to build relationships, those softer skills they don't necessarily touch on. And I think as a mentor, those are things that I focused on. Yes, the technical is there. You know, you've studied, you have the technical knowledge, you'll gain the experience as you work. But, you know, those types of things is teaching them those, you know, being, you know, the emotional, the EQ, those types of things, you know, things that us as well, we would, you know, no one ever sort of taught us that. And, you know, doing courses, I suppose, throughout your work life, a lot of these things kind of click in your mind and you realize, oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's pushing that knowledge onto the younger generation just to make it a bit easier for them, I think. And as I mentioned, I really think the digital world is a bit of a stumbling block, specifically for geologists, because, you know, as I said, getting your hands dirty and getting underground, and, you know, the physical aspect of the work is so important. So that's something else that, you know, as I said, stress to them is, you know, just do your time and you'll work your way up. It's just natural progression of things. So that's sort of been my journey with being a mentor, and things that I like to focus on when I have discussions and when we have sessions with each other about that.
Yeah. Love that. Absolutely love that. You know, since you and I work together, I've had a lot more exposure on the exploration side of things on the geology, and I got to really fall in love with geology like second to none. And I distinctly recall a lot of my last couple of years going underground and having a very senior geologist person next to me that could tell me about what they see in the rock. And we would literally spend hours underground and, you know, talking about the microenvironment, which is a picture of the macro environment and what the system drives. And now where's the source of this deposit? And I tell you, there's nothing like going underground and then having these very, you know, technical conversations and unpacking what's happening with the rock types and with the deposition and the deposition model, and where do we find the ore next. And I cannot agree with you more that that's really where things happen. But that's also relationship building, because I mean, what better way of spending time with your colleagues than actually on the face and, you know, at the working front, and actually showing them that you deeply care about what they do, because we are all in this together. And from a teamwork perspective, how important is that for you? Now, there's different teams. We've got technical teams working as a team together. So maybe that's, you know, you were at one stage in your career the mineral resource manager, so you've got a diverse technical team under you that supports you, that you do stuff together for the operations management team. But how important is teamwork and your role in that and guiding that sort of behavior?
I mean, it's crucial, Christo, you know, from the guys taking the samples underground, you know, to the block model. And I think, having said that, a lot of what I like to stress with my teams and the guys is having discussions and letting them understand how they fit into the bigger picture. Because yes, they're doing their daily work and they're, you know, maybe they feel they're just sampling, but, you know, helping them understand what that sample means and how it translates into, you know, the annual reports at the end of the day, or the declaration and to the markets, you know. So it's not just the sample that you're taking. The importance of that sample and stressing to them the importance and making sure that you've done the diligence and that you're doing it correctly. Because ultimately, you know, how that sample rolls through through all the different processes and what the outcome is, it's all connected. So from a teamwork perspective, if you have buy-in from everybody and they understand the knock-on effects of the work that they're doing, I believe that goes such a long way in keeping people motivated. And putting them through specific programs, for example, the evaluation teams, you know, when our companies merged, they were reporting in different lines and it was kind of all over the show. And, you know, some had certain skills and other had, you know, different skills. So we've tried in the last couple of years, specifically with that team, is to make sure that they all have, you know, similar knowledge, putting them through the geology courses, giving them mapping experience, you know, experience that they maybe haven't been exposed to, because otherwise they just go underground, they do their daily job and they feel, what value am I adding at the end of the day? And it's helping them realize that and understand the value that they add, because it goes such a long way to motivating people. So that's, you know, people that you know would report into me or indirectly is you know, making them understand the value that they do add. I think that you know, I've seen a lot of positive response to that. I mean, naturally, you've got the people that just want to go underground and, you know, do their job and come out and earn their salary at the end of the day. But majority of the people, as you know, in this industry are very motivated people. They love what they do. It's so unique and dynamic. So that helps a lot in keeping people motivated and, you know, getting good quality of work out there, striving for best practice. And I think they also watch what you're doing. If that's, you know, your values and your beliefs at the end of the day, then, you know, they will naturally follow that. And as I said, I like to be an empathetic leader. So always putting myself in people's shoes, and not, as I mentioned, you know, for me, it's not about the different levels or, you know, what your position is. You're part of the team, regardless of whether you handling the core, cutting samples, or, you know, doing the reporting. So that's also, you know, putting people on a similar level, because we're all human, as you said, and, you know, we all like to get a pat on the back and, you know, to feel valued. So that's, you know, my sort of strategy from that perspective. In terms of my, you know, the direct technical teams, as again, I've been so fortunate to really have worked and still work with some awesome people. The merge that we had with the companies was quite rough. It's, you know, it's a big change, and I think if you don't adapt to that change, you kind of get spit out on the other end. And I must say, you know, the team that I was put into when we had the merge, if it weren't for that team, I don't know that I would have made it to where I am now. It's such a strong group of guys. They're extremely supportive. We have fun together, which is also important. You know, it's not always just serious work. So I really, you know, I'm thankful to them and the guys, you know, that I've worked with previously. You know, you yourself being one of them. You know, I think the fact that after so many years that you and I could still have a chat and, you know, connect just shows the level of, I suppose, respect and connection that we all have as these technical teams. So I'm really thankful for having that and having experienced that in my career. It's been awesome.
Oh, thanks, Nicole. Well, I hope everybody's having as much fun as I am, and we're heading towards the close. Nicole, any last words of wisdom to a younger Nicole, a geologist out there that's one of many that needs to make a name for themselves? And maybe there's an oversupply of geologists at the moment, as you say, people that have got jobs and or have got the other qualifications, but there are no jobs for them at the moment. What would you tell a younger Nicole right now? And last few words on your end.
I think I still tell myself this every day, and it's believe in yourself. You have to have confidence. You have to believe that the skills that you've acquired and the things that you know and the knowledge that you have is value adding. People trust that you know what you're talking about. And yeah, just believing in yourself, because if you don't, I think then it's going to be very difficult for you, because people pick up on that energy. They can see if you're hesitant or if you don't. And I think admitting as well when, it's okay to say you don't know, or you don't understand something. That's perfectly okay. But then take the time to go and find out and investigate and understand that for yourself, as well as the people that you're providing a service to. So yeah, I think that's confidence. That's sort of one of the biggest ones, I think, specifically for the younger woman. I mean, I do see that, as I said, they kind of, some of them minimize themselves. They don't necessarily believe that they have value to add. And sometimes, whether it's a difficult manager that they're reporting to, or just a difficult environment, it's, if they have that confidence, if they get a bit more pushy, people will start listening and maybe making changes for them. So those are the biggest sort of takeaways, I think, things that I would have maybe done differently, or that I would advise myself if I could now.
Well, those are awesome words of wisdom. And as Nicole says, and I'm saying as well, we're all still learning, we're growing, we're not there. We're never happy with where we are. We're moving along. Nicole, it was such an honor and a privilege to have you on the Mining Coach podcast today. We thank you for your contribution today, and willing to share your story, and willing to be vulnerable and share us a little bit about this window of what's happening in Nicole's life at the moment. Thank you very much. We wish you all the best for your career going forward, and we'll see each other all the time going forward. All the best. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Christo. I've really, really enjoyed chatting to you. So it's been great. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thanks. All right, let's recap. What an awesome session today. So there are 5 things that stand out for me. This is my perspective of today. Number 1, as a leader, make sure you continually step into your team members' shoes to understand their perspective, which is part of being an empathetic leader. Second one, really listen to understand. Number 3, believe in yourself. Number 4, don't be afraid to speak up when you have something to say. And then finally, number 5, it's okay to say, I don't know, but then go and find the answer and get back to that person. Thank you for listening this week. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers. The Mining Coach is part of Comena Consulting. If your company is in need of technical study support, due diligence studies, business improvement projects, or business and senior leadership coaching, why don't you contact us directly by clicking on the show notes and following the links that will connect you to us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers.